In this video, we are going to take a look at how to write outputs and input statements in a general program. Let's begin. So, anytime you write your program interacts with the user. And with the interaction with the user, a lot of times the user interacts by entering inputs via the keyboard. And then after entering the inputs via the keyboard, the program you are running will show an output to the user using the screen. So the screen and the keyboard are most of the times the modes of outputs or the mediums through which we interact with the program. A lot of times programs also interact with the user input from files and then writing files as well. So basically that's how program interacts with the user. Let's go through some of the stuff that we'll be doing. Right now, we're only learning how to write a program. So we are not using any particular language. And that's what I termed in the video of the control structures as a pseudocode. In this case, we are writing codes which are just in structured English form. They are not really in any language, so we are not following a particular syntax. But for understanding purposes, we try to restrict ourselves to a particular way of writing even our pseudocode just to make sense. So when a user is interacting with a program, the user would at a point be asked for a particular input. Let's say the user is being asked of his age, the user is being asked of his phone number, those kind of things. Your program should have a particular line or a particular statement, which when run by the PC would be waiting for the user to now enter his detail. If we are taking the user's phone number, then there should be a line of code written such that when the compiler or the controller, whoever is running the program, when it gets to that particular line, it now waits for the user to enter a particular detail. So that's what we will call input. Anytime a user enters a detail, a user gives particular data to the program, it is stored in memory and it is stored in something we call a variable. Okay, we've talked about variables already. If you haven't checked the video up there, so it stores the data that the user has entered in a variable. And so we are going to take a look at how to write such statements that will help our program know that, okay, we are instructing or we are expecting some particular data from a user. In that case, we should wait for the user's input, and when he now gives the input, we store it in a variable. We will take a look at an example in a particular language and then we will proceed. Okay, so that is it here. The syntax, when I talk about the syntax, the rule for writing such a statement is by writing an input verb. We'll take a look at what an input verb is, and then we follow it with a variable name. Okay, so over here we have a variable name, and you can tell the user to input a lot of things, and then you just separate them with commas. Okay, so the square bracket here just tells you that it's more or less an optional something. You can decide to bring just one variable name, or you can decide to separate a lot of variable names with comments over here. So we'll take a look at an example. So let's proceed. So the kinds of input verbs to use, you can say get the age of the person, input the salary of the person, read the salary, read the age, accept. Those kind of verbs are allowed, because the moment you're writing your pseudocode and you're expecting a particular variable to be entered, then all that you will have to do is to write any of these verbs, and then you follow it with the name of the variable that you want to receive data into. Now an example is shown on screen. We have examples of input statements, and then the first one is input name of client. So imagine we have this line. The moment this program is run and it hits this particular line, we are going to have the user entering his name and age. That's for the first line. And then his name will be entered into the name of client variable, and then his age is going to be put into the age of client variable. You can use get as well to be able to get the sex of the person interacting with the program, and then accept can also be used. The last line we've not talked about it, that's arrays. We've not talked about that, so I'll skip that for now. But basically there are arrays too. So as we move on, we will come across them, and then all right, so let's proceed. So the next thing we take a look at is pseudocode output statement. So we are talking about pseudocode basically because pseudocodes are just a rough way of representing our algorithm, not in any particular language. Okay. So in this case, anytime a user is interacting with a program, the user would have to see something before he now reacts. So imagine a user runs a program, and the program is expecting him to enter his age, but there is no output on the screen. Nothing was said to the user, not even through the screen or speaker or anything of that sort. In that case, the user wouldn't see anything. So there are instances we have to show the user something before he now also interacts with our program. So for such instances, we have things like prompts. So prompts are more or less things that we write on the screen to cause the user to see that, okay, we're expecting this input, so they should enter some value. Okay, so the types of information that will be displaying on the screen could be prompts, could be output after a particular computation, and then a couple lots more. Now, the syntax for writing an output statement. You begin with an output verb. We'll take a look at output verbs in the next slide. And then you can output the value of a variable, okay? And then you can output a constant. And you can write a prompt to maybe what's your name. What's your name is more or less you are prompting the user to enter his name, okay? And then you can separate more of those items with commas, right? So there are some verbs that you can use as your output verbs. Okay, so the moment you write a pseudocode, you write something to represent code you want to write in a particular language. Then you can use these words or the verbs put, output, print, display. Those are more or less like trying to show someone something. Okay, so the moment you write that, you mean okay, maybe after I'm done with my computation, I want this particular thing to be shown. A pseudocode is not a runnable code, it's just for presentation. Alright, so an example could be output age of students. So in this case, we are giving a result. So this thing over here, if you watch the variable video, we talked about types of data that we store in memory. This thing over here is a string. So the moment you put quotation marks around it, whatever is listed over here is printed just like it is. Age of student with an equal sign, and then there's a comma, and then there's age. That's the variable. Output sum of A and B equal, put it in quotes, comma, then we have A plus B. So those are more or less like strings. And then just like having them like that, you can separate them with commas and then print the values that follow because we are using the output over here. It varies from program to program, but we are writing pseudocode. And as I said, no one is restricting us, but we have to more or less conform to a particular. You understand what I'm saying? Good. So this is the end, but I want to run something over here so we understand what a prompt is and then do stuff. Give me a second. So on the screen, we can see a particular IDE. We talk about IDEs when we start writing programs with a particular language. But over here, let's take a look at this. We've already written a program, so I'm only showing what a prompt is. Something like this can be spoken of as a prompt, which is causing the user. When I run this, let's take a look at this. So over here, you can see that anytime you're interacting with a program and then you see name with a colon, you understand that they are expecting you to enter your name, and so you enter your name, and then when you are done, there is an output. Okay, so that's basically it for this program that we are dealing with. This C++, and hence this is one of its output statements. Okay, or the output verbs. So the output verbs that I talked about, but because we are writing algorithm, that's basically it. Now imagine this particular program wanted you to enter your name, and then you run it, and you don't know they expect you to enter your name. How would you interact with the program? So these are some of the reasons why we would need outputs, or we will need prompts to be shown to the user to aid in an interaction. Okay, so this is basically where we end, and then we will have another video